The chain of explosions flared up as the two refining facilities in Ryazan and Volgograd were struck simultaneously. Ukraine launched an offensive using hundreds of cheap drones, forcing Russian air defenses to concentrate all their firepower on the decoy targets. The rapidly increasing density of the UAVs pushed Russian radar into overload, compelling air defense launch pads to fire continuously to intercept each swarm, thereby creating a temporary gap in the defensive network. Once Russian air defenses had depleted their interceptor missiles, Storm Shadow and Taurus missiles, technically supported by the UK and Germany, began to infiltrate at low altitude, hugging the terrain to evade ground-based observation. They were programmed to lock onto the distillation towers and the industrial core, the areas containing the pressure processing systems, high-temperature pipelines, and oil separation equipment. A series of penetrating warheads sliced through the metal structures, triggering a chain reaction of spreading fires across the entire refinery complex. The destruction of the heat regulation centers caused the entire auxiliary process chain to lose control. Several industrial units exploded due to a rapid increase in pressure. Operating crews were forced to evacuate the area via emergency exits, while fire and medical teams had to split up to handle the widespread fire points. In a very short time, Russia's two largest refining facilities suffered heavy losses in equipment, personnel, and fuel production capacity. At the NATO command bunker, satellite images confirmed that the industrial zones had been hit with pinpoint accuracy. Thermal maps clearly showed a wide area of destruction, confirming the warheads had successfully penetrated the designated structures. British and German officers viewed this as proof that Ukraine's saturation tactic had completely opened the corridor for cruise missiles. Some internal reports assessed that the Russian defense system had been pushed to a breaking point and would take many hours to recover. However, there was no public reaction from the Russian side. No emergency declaration, no explanation for the damage, and no sign of panic. Russian military communication channels switched to secret mode, completely closing off from Western electromagnetic scanning systems. Those monitoring the battlefield realized this was not paralysis. It was a sign that Russia was preparing an organized response that was part of a long-term plan. Russia's strategic air force, naval units, and electronic warfare forces all shifted to combat status almost simultaneously. Multiple secret data transmission lines were activated in a sequence, indicating not a chaotic reaction but the deployment of a pre-planned operation. NATO's Strategic Analysis Department quickly recognized the anomaly. Russia wasn't rushing to retaliate. Instead, they were maintaining a deliberate silence, something unprecedented in previous confrontations. While NATO believed they had delivered a crippling blow to Russia's energy backbone, the prolonged silence from the Kremlin prevented many Western war analysis rooms from determining the next step. European surveillance networks continuously reported that Russia was moving troops and adjusting launch sites, but the final objective remained unclear. It was only when all of Russia's strategic military systems simultaneously changed status that the nature of the silence became clear. It was the final preparation for Operation Absolute Darkness, a national counter-strike designed not just to retaliate for a single attack but to completely alter the battlefield situation. Immediately after activating the secret data transmission lines, Russia deployed a counter-strike force on a scale never before seen throughout the war. The strategic command system shifted to its highest priority level, allowing air, naval, and missile forces to receive simultaneous action orders in a precisely programmed sequence. The Olenya and Engels bases continuously opened their runways, pushing two 95 milliseconds and two 160 strategic bombers into takeoff position. Each carried a large number of Kh-101 long-range cruise missiles, enough to strike dozens of key targets in a single wave. Underwater, Kilo submarines moved to launch positions, while Buyan-M ships activated their navigation systems and prepared to fire caliber missiles. In the air, MiG-31K aircraft controlling Kinzhal missiles switched to combat-ready mode, awaiting synchronization signals from the Central Command. The opening salvo didn't come from missiles, but from a swarm of Juran-2 drones. Russia launched them in huge clusters, numbering in the thousands, creating a dense layer of targets across the entire Ukrainian sky. Ukraine's air defense network and NATO-supported systems were forced to continuously expend ammunition to keep cities from falling into chaos. Patriot, Iris, and Gepard radars were pushed to maximum performance as they tried to track all incoming targets simultaneously. In a short time, Ukraine's air defense ammunition was severely depleted. The defense batteries were almost incapable of maintaining the minimum interception density. Just as Ukraine's radar network was overwhelmed, Russia launched its main attack. A barrage of Kh-101 cruise missiles left their launch pads, flying along terrain avoiding curves, while caliber missiles came in from the sea in a different direction to fragment the enemy airspace. The Kinzhal missiles, launched at high speed by MiG-31K aircraft, tore through Ukrainian airspace on a trajectory that was virtually impossible to intercept. From 3 directions north, east, and the Black Sea, this massive volume of missiles converged into a simultaneous strike, hitting critical energy infrastructure. 750 kilovolt substations, eastern power transmission lines, thermal power plants, water supply facilities, and heating systems in Kharkiv. The first chain of targets collapsed in minutes. A series of power plants were disabled, sharply reducing Ukraine's energy supply. The destruction of key substations triggered a domino effect, leading to the disconnection of numerous high-voltage lines. The remaining backup lines couldn't handle the sudden increase in load and failed sequentially. Kharkiv suffered the heaviest losses as its centralized heating and water supply control centers were destroyed almost simultaneously. Regional thermal power plants couldn't operate, forcing the urban system to cut all supply. City traffic was paralyzed as control systems lost power, and many roads had to be blocked due to infrastructure damage. In Kyiv, hit infrastructure points caused the power regulation system to fall into imbalance. Operating engineers were forced to shut down the entire network to prevent widespread failures. Odessa and Lviv experienced similar situations, as the destruction of booster lines and switching stations made it impossible for the cities to maintain independent power sources. In a single attack wave, Ukraine's entire national power grid collapsed. Military and civilian backup systems were paralyzed. Ukraine entered its deepest infrastructure crisis since the start of the war. This strike was not just retaliation, it was the first step of a national crippling strategy. And it was only the beginning. Following the simultaneous attack, Ukraine entered a phase of nationwide infrastructure collapse. Major cities lost power at once, cutting civil and military systems off from all basic operational power. With no functioning substations left, the grid was in a state of absolute paralysis. Kyiv plunged into darkness as the power distribution system was destroyed at multiple points. Traffic stopped, with thousands of vehicles stuck because all traffic lights were dead. Subway lines, used as shelters, were frozen as all control systems shut down abruptly. Numerous passengers were trapped between tunnels, forcing rescue teams to manually evacuate people. Odessa was similarly hard hit. The water treatment plant stopped operating due to power loss, causing clean water reserves to drop quickly. The pumping system completely halted, making it impossible for high-rise buildings to self-supply water. Aid lines from surrounding areas became impossible because supply depots lost power and could not maintain the preservation chain. Lviv, the logistical hub in western Ukraine, was crippled by the total network disconnection. Military units there could not receive data, transmit orders, or maintain auxiliary radar systems. All western Ukraine defense coordination operations were paralyzed. In Kharkiv, where the centralized heating system suffered the most severe destruction, the impact spread fastest. High-pressure heat pipelines could not be restarted because the central distribution station was knocked out. Many hospitals had to partially close as they could not maintain temperature or operate electronic equipment. Operating rooms, ventilators, and life support devices all ceased functioning. Many patients required emergency transfer, but medical transport was severely limited because reserve fuel could not be pumped out of storage. Ukraine's entire telecommunications system was paralyzed. Cell towers lost power, halting the mobile network. Fiber optic internet was cut because amplifier stations lost power. The Ukrainian military could not maintain tactical and strategic level communication. Domestic news could not be circulated. Citizens lacked evacuation instructions or security warnings. At the national level, the information breakdown forced the Kyiv government to use backup satellite communication channels. However, the number of devices capable of maintaining a signal was too few to control the entire national operating system. Emergency agencies could not coordinate, creating widespread chaos. In the military sector, the collapse of the power grid caused training facilities, weapon storage depots, and armored vehicle maintenance centers to cease operations. Many units could no longer recharge batteries for optical equipment, nor could they operate radar systems or UAV control stations. Artillery forces did not receive target coordinate updates because the transmission network was completely severed. The national logistics system lost half its capacity in just a few hours. Railroad lines stopped as locomotives could not operate. Dozens of trains were stuck mid-route, suspending the transport of weapons and fuel. Ukraine was not just without electricity, it was cut off from its entire modern operational foundation. From clean water, food, healthcare, transportation, telecommunications, to military command capability, everything was reduced to zero. The paralysis spread faster than any Western intelligence agency predicted. And while Ukrainian society descended into chaos, Russia prepared for the next step, breaking Ukraine's defense backbone in a precise and comprehensive attack. While Ukraine was still engulfed in chaos due to infrastructure collapse, Russia immediately activated the second phase of the attack, the elimination of all enemy rearmament capabilities. Electronic reconnaissance units of the GRU and SVR, which had been monitoring Ukraine's military production for months, were now ordered to deploy all data. The death map, the secret system marking weapons factories, ammunition depots, and maintenance facilities was unlocked. The first target was the underground drone production plant in Kyiv. This facility, located deep underground and using imported European equipment, specialized in assembling long-range UAVs. Russia directed a MiG carrying a Kinzhal missile to the launch position. Only a single missile was used. The penetrating warhead tore through thick layers of earth and protective concrete, collapsing the entire production line in a single strike. Engineers, operating personnel, and security forces in the bunker were eliminated, costing Kyiv its most critical drone production facility. Immediately afterward, the second target was locked, the Neptune missile workshop in Odessa. This was where Ukraine hoped to build its sea deterrence capability. Russia launched a combination of Caliber and Iskander missiles, hitting both the assembly area and the engine storage depot. The chain of explosions spread from the main point to the auxiliary rooms, rendering the entire facility inoperable. Any surviving production equipment was buried under rubble, with no short-term prospect of recovery. Russia didn't stop at factories. They aimed straight for the Western Weapons Reception Center at Yavoriv, the staging area for Storm Shadow and Taurus cruise missiles and 155mm artillery shells. This facility was built deep into an earth hill, with multiple protective layers. But the precise targeting data from the GRU allowed Russia to identify the structural weakness. 3 Kinzhal missiles were chosen for the annihilating strike. The first penetrated dozens of meters of earth and rock. The second broke through the innermost reinforced concrete defense layer. The third carried a thermobaric warhead, creating an explosion zone that reduced the entire underground space to a cloud of hot dust. The explosion's pressure deformed the terrain. Many residential areas dozens of kilometers away felt mild tremors, with windows shattering from the shockwave. Yavoriv, previously considered Ukraine's most critical training and transit center, lost all operational capacity immediately. This sequence of attacks halted all plans for NATO weapon replenishment to Ukraine. Armored vehicle repair plants, self-propelled artillery maintenance facilities, and military fuel reserve depots were also destroyed by large-caliber cruise missiles. Most domestic defense production lines, already strained before the campaign, now ceased operations entirely. Ukrainian military units reported severe shortages of components, ammunition, and replacement equipment. Many missile defense units had to withdraw from key positions because they lacked sufficient ammunition. Military radar centers lost power and could not be restarted. The entire command and control network was fractured, making Ukraine unable to react to any subsequent strikes. In a matter of hours, Russia had not only destroyed industrial infrastructure but also wiped out Ukraine's capacity to self-produce, repair, and receive weapons. The battlefield situation changed so rapidly that many Western experts assessed Ukraine had lost its defense backbone right in the middle of the war. But that was just the stepping stone. After eliminating rearmament capacity, Russia moved to its next target, hunting down and destroying all NATO officers operating secretly in Ukraine. After destroying Ukraine's rearmament capability, Russia immediately switched its entire combat system to the most sensitive target, hunting down the British and German officers running the support operation from behind the lines. The hunt was not immediately conducted by ground forces but began with a national-scale electromagnetic blockade. In Ukraine's state of paralyzed infrastructure, NATO advisors were forced to use emergency communication equipment to maintain contact with Central Command. This very moment revealed their location. Krasuka and Murmansk-BN strategic jamming systems were deployed from Belarus and Crimea, locking down all frequency bands used by NATO for emergency communication. All outgoing signals were forced to broadcast at a higher power to break through the jamming layer, and that was exactly what Russia needed. 3 electronic direction finding stations located in Belarus, Kaliningrad, and the Black Sea region immediately cross-referenced the data. In just a few dozen seconds, the emission location of a NATO command center in Yavoriv was marked. This was an underground command bunker, designed to coordinate the operations of Storm Shadow, Taurus cruise missiles, and Western reconnaissance systems. Russia had long suspected its existence but hadn't had enough signals for absolute confirmation until Ukraine lost power. With the precise coordinates, Spetsnaz special forces were deployed covertly. The infiltration teams used forest routes near the border to approach the area. They did not attack directly but used microdrones to scan the ground area above the command bunker. Thermal images from the Cosmos satellite supplemented the data, allowing them to confirm the density of personnel and equipment operating below. The data showed the personnel count far exceeded that of typical advisors. Russia knew the precise operating times of each equipment cluster, clearly identifying the location of meeting rooms, data processing centers, and the congregation point of high-ranking officers. A target-designating laser system was covertly embedded into the hillside, using invisible light to guide missiles in the final stage. Inside the bunker, British and German officers tried to restore communication with Kyiv, but all lines were blocked. Using pocket satellite equipment only revealed more emission sources. NATO experts realized the signals were being tracked but had no other option. They were unaware that turning on each communication channel was reporting their position to Russian forces. Once the data was complete, Russia sealed off the entire area. Roads around Yavoriv were cut by special forces who had yet to reveal themselves. Some NATO military vehicles attempted to leave the base but were forced to turn back due to the dense jamming zone making navigation equipment inoperable. When the ground was sealed, Spetsnaz transmitted the final signal to headquarters. 100% confirmation of NATO officers' presence beneath the command bunker. Immediately, the Russian General Staff issued a clear and concise order. Annihilate the command center, no warning, no chance for evacuation, no safe corridor. For Russia, this was no longer a battle against Ukraine, it was an opportunity to completely eliminate the secret command network of the UK and Germany in Eastern Europe, putting an end to NATO's deep involvement in the battlefield. The phase of destruction began immediately, paving the way for the lightning strike in the next part, the total annihilation of NATO at Yavoriv. Immediately following the order to annihilate the command center, Russia deployed an attack wave pre-programmed days earlier. All operational tactical missile forces simultaneously shifted to firing status. The sole target, the NATO defense system and command bunker at Yavoriv. The opening salvo was a swarm of Duran-2 and FPV drones launched in large clusters. Numbering in the thousands, they formed a dense target layer. Ukraine and the NATO batteries deployed at Yavoriv were forced to activate radar and fire continuously to maintain the defense line. Patriot, Iris, and Gepard could not remain silent against the incoming drone swarm. The entire air defense system was forced to activate simultaneously. The Patriot radar was fully exposed on Russia's electromagnetic map. Every time Patriot locked a target, the feedback signal was immediately recorded by the Russian system. Ukraine's air defense forces depleted ammunition at an accelerating rate, while the Russian drones kept coming. After a few minutes, several batteries reported a sharp reduction in interception capability. Some Patriot launchers ran out of ammunition, forced to switch to standby mode. This was the moment Russia was waiting for. As the enemy defense was depleted, Russia launched the main attack. From three directions, Belarus, the Black Sea, and eastern bases Iskander-M missiles were launched in the first salvo. Simultaneously, MiG-31 aircraft launched Kinzhal at high speed, creating an uninterceptable strike in the final stage. In just a few dozen seconds, Patriot and Iris systems were destroyed. The shattered radar stations left the air defense at Yavoriv in a state of complete blindness. Gepard could not operate effectively without guidance radar, forcing a retreat to the rear. But there was no longer enough time. Russia did not stop at destroying the defense. The bunker-busting strike was launched immediately afterward. 3 Kinzhal missiles were programmed to hit the exact same spot. The first penetrated 40 meters of earth and rock, breaching the outer defense. The second slammed through the reinforced concrete core, collapsing the innermost defense line. The third carried a thermobaric warhead, designed to destroy the entire underground space. When the final warhead exploded, all air inside the command bunker was instantly sucked out. The data coordination system, the central command room, and the operational meeting area were completely destroyed. The British and German officers present the same people who had directed the earlier attacks on Russia were eliminated from combat immediately. The pressure from the explosion deformed the entire Earth Hill. The bunker, designed to withstand tactical nuclear weapons, still could not survive the continuous multi-layer penetrating strike. The ground surface was pushed up and cracked widely, forming a massive crater where the NATO command center in Ukraine once stood. The Russian Air Force continued to drop concrete penetrating bombs to lock down all rescue access. FAB 3000 and KAB 1500 were deployed to ensure that no structure remained usable or offered concealment. All vehicles, containers holding communication equipment, ammunition depots, and switchboard areas were wiped from the map. In a matter of minutes, Yavoriv, NATO's largest logistical and training facility on Ukrainian territory, was turned into a scorched wasteland covered in hot smoke. There was no resistance left, no control systems, no command center. Russia had executed one of the most decisive strikes of the operation. The destruction of the entire network of secret NATO officers, simultaneously collapsing the strategic-level defense in western Ukraine. The next step will not just be a military strike but a political shockwave that will rock NATO from within. After the NATO command bunker was wiped off the map, Russia immediately launched the final phase of destruction to ensure Yavoriv could never be reused. Long-range artillery units were ordered to deploy intensive fire. 152mm artillery shells rained down on the remaining parts of the base, destroying command vehicles, troop assembly areas, and any surviving auxiliary underground structures. Tornado-S systems fired long-range guided missiles from pre-calculated positions, striking areas suspected of containing logistical depots and NATO equipment staging points. There was no time for the enemy to organize a defense. Every suspected point of surviving personnel were neutralized with precise fire. Immediately following the artillery, TOS-1A thermobaric flamethrower vehicles proceeded to sweep the ground area with high-pressure fire. Although the entire base was already near total destruction, Russia still implemented this step to ensure no auxiliary bunkers, underground pipelines, or deep shelters could conceal any remaining NATO or Ukrainian forces. After each volley, all surface vegetation and light fortifications were swept clean. The Russian Air Force continued to drop large guided bombs to mark the end of the operation. KAB 1500s were used to strike points suspected of having intact embedded concrete structures. FAB 3000 seconds were deployed to create enormous craters, eradicating all remaining foundations of the base. In just a few minutes, the entire area spanning tens of square kilometers became a scorched earth zone, with no recognizable structures left. After the battle at Yavoriv concluded, the Russian Ministry of Defense held a special press conference. Data from satellite systems and special forces was released, including the full identities of the British and German officers killed in the command bunker. The number far exceeded all European public predictions, revealing the extent of NATO's direct involvement in the battlefield. The information immediately triggered a chain reaction. In Germany, thousands took to the streets, demanding the government explain why their military personnel were present in a war zone without parliamentary approval. Opposition parties constantly attacked, accusing the government of secretly deploying troops to Ukraine, putting the nation at risk of direct confrontation with Russia. In the UK, the situation was no better. Media reported that numerous intelligence officers and technical advisors were killed at Yavoriv. Many members of parliament demanded a full investigation, arguing that the government had intentionally concealed the truth and pushed Britain into a conflict the public knew nothing about. NATO was put on the defensive by the major question: why did the alliance declare non-combatant status, yet have a large number of high-ranking officers die in a Ukrainian command bunker? The lack of transparency severely undermined European public trust. Russia concluded the press conference with a brief but strategically potent message. Any form of armed NATO presence in Ukraine is a legitimate target. Any force that tests Russia will be met with uncompromising retaliation. The outcome was not just the collapse of a military base, but a political seismic shock that shook the entire structure of Western belief in the war. Yavoriv no longer existed, and from that moment, both the battlefield and the European political landscape entered a completely new phase.